Sources are telling CNN that the FBI's unprecedented search of President Biden's Delaware home followed very high-stakes talks between the Justice Department and Biden attorneys, and the department was prepared to seek a search warrant.
The biggest thing that surprises me about that is, and I'm being honest here, I'm not even trying to be fun, I didn't know Wolf Blitzer was still alive. Or at the very least, I didn't know Wolf Blitzer was still on the CNN.
Wow.
The Department of Justice, and I don't know, maybe this is not that big of a thing. The Department of Justice was prepared to seek a warrant for the Biden documents, but avoided a Mar-a-Lago-esque raid by consenting to the search. Department of Justice was going to do this. They searched the home on Friday. Now, this is not this was the one that we learned about over the weekend. So as we were all hanging out probably 1 week ago here on the show and on Feel Good Friday, apparently there were talks between the Department of Justice, Biden's attorneys, and at one point, apparently, now here was the original statement. During talks, the possibility of a warrant did not arise, sources told CNN. But federal investigators were prepared to seek one if Biden was uncooperative. So it sounds sexy, but I wonder, yeah, of course they were prepared to seek a warrant, but it tells me they knew, like, we got to do something here.
Well, and I think when we first learned about the first batch of Biden documents, they said, oh, the word was, it's different. And it's different because he turned himself in and he told us about the documents. But what we learned over, the course of the last couple days was he didn't really turn himself in. He didn't go to the DOJ. He told his own lawyers and he told the White House, we've got a problem. I've got these documents. And then he told the archives. He told people, he didn't go to the DOJ that he had the documents. He was telling people, on his side, hey, I've got these documents. And then they were the ones who then went to DOJ and was like, yeah, we got these documents. So yeah, it's ridiculous. But yeah, the fact that, they were saying maybe we should, do some further investigation and maybe we need to seek a warrant because it's not different because maybe Trump was fighting the DOJ, whatever, but Biden wasn't exactly being forthcoming in the beginning either. And that's what we've been learning over the last week as well.
And to hide that from you, to hide it from us, the American people, prior to the midterm election. Because if we had known about those documents prior to the midterm election, I'm pretty sure we would have had a massive red wave. That probably wouldn't have happened, would it have, if we'd known about the documents? Maybe not. Welcome in.
No.
John, have we found...
I wish.
So that's what I'm going to... Well, if we'd known about those documents, there would have been that red wave that everybody was predicting. Marsh, any new documents found overnight that you're aware of? Okay. Yeah. Well, and the other thing with what's happened with the White House, it's, the documents, but it's the handling of the communications to the American public, to the taxpayer.
It's exactly what we're doing. There's no there there.
There's no there there. I take documents seriously. I had them in my garage. Americans don't care. It's communications. And we've seen that locally. Columbia Public School District, for example, and the whole thing last week with where they took little kids to see drag performers. The worst part of that's bad. It is the lack of communication. It is that, I'll call them downright lies of what's been happening. One of the things we've learned this morning, apparently $500 was paid to that inclusion company, but it is the communication from the school district. By the way, that in West Virginia, that 6-year-old that showed up with a gun and apparently school officials knew and then holy cow, shot that teacher. The superintendent there is doing the right thing and resigning. There's a superintendent in Chicago School District. He's resigned over a Christmas performance. But they are doing the right thing. Listen, the parents are not happy with the job you are doing. They are doing the right thing. We are not seeing that here. We do have some new developments on the whole story, by the way, now picked up by Newsweek, picked up by Fox News. This thing is nationwide, but we have locally some developments on that story.
Well, the two big developments right now, Brandon, and number one, I did check with Senator Caleb Rowden. I've been following up with him, and obviously I don't have a specific date or time. We know it's going to be very soon because he says it will take place later this week, but it'll be a meeting between Senator Rowden and Superintendent Dr. Brian Yearwood. School board members will be there as well. Rowden says says he's been flooded with emails and complaints, so we know that will take place. Hopefully we'll get an update from him afterwards about how that meeting goes, because there's suggestions from some senators. We have hearings. The other development is there has been a second letter, a scathing letter from the Attorney General to Dr. Yearwood. It's a lot of the same stuff, but there's some new stuff here. In this sentence here is brand new in his second letter from yesterday. Brandon, he writes this to the superintendent, General Bailey, to Dr. Yearwood, quote, "You have betrayed the trust and confidence of the parents who depend on you to educate their children," end of quote. He also says Dr. Yearwood cares more about indoctrination than about education. That is straight from the letter.
Man, that's powerful stuff. And Dr. Yearwood, the superintendent, and here's the number one reason he should resign. And you can look at a whole bunch of different things. You can look at the unhappiness with the large number of teachers within the district. You can look at CRT that is happening in classrooms. They will lie. No, it's not. It is happening. There's no classroom that says CRT 101. There's no textbook. They are lying about that. It is happening in Columbia Public Schools. Test scores, you can talk about that. You could talk about the drag performance. There's a whole number of things that he should resign for. The number one reason he should absolutely resign, for the kids, for the sake of the kids. And that's what's so frustrating about this. These people, it seems, in the Columbia Public School District, just so incredibly, I imagine these are people that drive around in their Toyota Priuses and fart and then like to inhale deeply. That's what I think about because they are so they are just so self-serving and smug. And you're dealing with kids and parents. And let me give you an example of why I say that. When you have school officials saying, well, only 2 parents complained. Yeah, only 2 parents have come to you and complained, because when parents have gone to school board meetings and been shut down by the school board president, when you have rules changed to limit public comment at the school board, when you have a history of poor communications, when you're trying to find out about your kids, yeah, they're not going to you anymore. They're not. If I'm going to the gas station and they don't have gas, I quit going there. They're not going to you anymore, and they're having to go to people like the top law enforcement official in Missouri. They're having to go to their state senator. They've been going to Chuck Basie over the years, State Rep Cherie Tolson-Reich. Yeah, they are not going to you anymore because you don't listen, and that is the number one reason, Dr. Yearwood, you should resign. You have fostered poor relationships with parents, and they'll cherry pick. Yeah, but look at this. Like, no. For the benefit of the kids and ultimately for the benefit of the community. Because look at what this is doing to the community. And that's not the first time the Columbia Public School District has caused problems in the community. These are taxpayer dollars. These are our kids. This is a community. And to not resign is incredibly smug and self-serving. It is beyond arrogant. It's sick. 874-9390. 874-93. Oh, by the way, some folks coming in 7:30 this morning. And I love this. Keith Simon has a series of things he's doing. It's called Truth Over Tribe. And I'll mention that here.
All right.
Because it's... No, it is what he's got this great thing about, listen, tribal politics to the point where, sure, I do it sometimes. That's why I want the guy to come in. I want to have an honest examination of myself and maybe other people. Like, yeah, we pick the team over the truth. That's at 7:35 this morning. I hope you can join us for that. Chuck, welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. What can we do for you this morning?
Well, I'll just keep this short, but anybody that is not thinking that the superintendent needs to resign, let's just remember this isn't like this is the first issue we've had with the Columbia Public Schools.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'm thinking, well, all of a sudden it comes to mind, there was another lie a couple of years ago about Black Lives Matter signs being up, and we were told they were taken down. I can't remember exactly, but there is a whole string of things. Chuck, we agree with you. Thank you for being a part of Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning on 93.9 The Eagle, 104.5 News Radio 950 KWOS. To my left, Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
She's working on the daily DC rundown. We're going to do that here in less than 10 minutes. Excited to get to that. Does Trump getting back on the social medias, does that count as a newsworthy item in the daily DC rundown? Because I'm excited.
Yes,
Yeah,
it does. The opportunity. I mean, he's not really back. He's still kind of refusing to be on, but he could be on. You think?
No. I'm excited to see what happens. There's producer Hannah.
Good morning.
We're going to be doing What's Hot with Hannah, 7:25-ish. I already know the topic today.
Yeah.
Born out of something that happened yesterday on What's Hot with Hannah. And then in the show, it's cheese. Find out why, 7:25. Mr. Marsh is here. My name is Branden Rathert, 874-9390. Joe, welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. What's up?
Well, I think Trump's our next president, and Yearwood's our past school board president. I'm glad to see him go. I like our scholars, but I don't like our unions. Our school unions are horrible.
Joe, I agree with you. I agree. Yearwood is not the school board president. He's the superintendent of the Columbia Public School District. But frankly, unfortunately, that board, and I agree, the board needs to be wiped out. It's frustrating. Here's the thing. We talk about you get out and vote. And I would like to believe that within city limits, in the city limits of Columbia, biggest town here in mid-Missouri, there's very few conservatives that live within city limits that go and vote, and that's why we keep electing disasters to the school board and largely to the city council. I'm frustrated. I'm saddened to see Matt Pitzer is not running for re-election. Ideally, somebody good will be going in his place. That's why we elect disasters like Andrea Wayner and Pat Fowler. Andrea Wayner tipping these drag performers at that performance last week, because in the city limits of Columbia, there's just not enough conservatives to affect good, positive change, and that's why kids keep getting put into harm's way. Marissa, welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Branden. I just wanted to chime in on, the ongoing CPS saga. Along with Yearwood, Michelle Baumstark should resign too. That woman is a cancer to CPS. She treats people like complete crap.
Yeah.
If we looked at her press release, in capital letters, she said N-O-T, not, multiple times when she was dismissive of anybody having a voice that is a taxpayer or a parent in CPS. And that woman was on the planning committee. She was on the planning committee for
the
that
city
diversity event.
Right. She was on the planning committee on behalf of the city for that diversity and planning event. Okay, not as
but at the same time,
right.
At the same time, she is our chief communications officer, so she knew about the drag show.
And if you get a chance,
she needs to go.
Yeah. If you get a chance, if we can find some kind of documentation that would prove that she was part of the city's planning thing on behalf of the city. Remember, this was not a school event. This was an event sponsored by the city that the school took kids to. If you can get us some proof that she was indeed on the planet, as I understand it, she was on that planning committee. And I agree, the spokesperson, Michelle Baumstark, we've had our dealings where she's tried to tell me that, in effect, I wasn't being truthful, and then I sent her proof. No, I'm being truthful. You are not. And she is smug towards parents. And I agree. She should go, too. As a matter of fact, I would probably... Well, they all should go. Coming up, Daily DC Daily DC Rundown. What do you have underneath the circus tent this morning, Stephanie Bell?
Well, we've got a lot going on, but I think most importantly, people are saying, hey, all of those documents that are floating around, maybe we should find out what's in there.
Huh, that is a great question. Let's look into that. We're going to be doing your Daily DC Rundown coming up 5 minutes from now.
If that information concerns Burisma, if it concerns Hunter Biden, if it concerns communist China paying Hunter Biden and the Biden family millions of dollars, then it shifts into a very serious issue of corruption and real potential criminal liability.
Senator Ted Cruz, Stephanie Bell, Headspace in the same place this morning. So what is in these documents? That's what's getting us into today's Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
What is in the documents? That's a question that senators are asking. Members of the Senate Intelligence Committee said Wednesday that they were asking, hey, we, have access to classified information, so you should tell us what's in all of these documents. Now, at 3 different folks' places of residence / garages, and the DOJ is saying maybe no, we are not going to tell you what's in the documents, and senators are understandably frustrated, and yeah, I mean, it's important, right? Are these, and we talked yesterday, should they have been classified from the first instance? Are they important? Are they not important? And so senators are saying, let us know, and the intelligence community is pushing back and saying maybe not. Now, you brought this to my attention. I had no idea, but this is wild. So, had you heard this before? Did you know this?
I have never heard this story.
Okay, 13-year-old in 1984 shows up for show and tell. First of all, do you do show and tell as a 13-year-old? I don't know. That's a little bit weird.
Yeah, but it was never sanctioned by the teacher.
Shows up with a briefcase for show and tell and says, hey, I got something really cool. Classified documents, opens a zippered briefcase and said, my dad was staying at a hotel and found this cool briefcase. It's got some really important government documents. Teacher opens up zippered briefcase and suddenly sees a stamp that says classified confidential executive and property of the United States government on the papers inside the zippered briefcase. Apparently, we've been talking, were they papers? Were they individual documents? Were they files?
Photographs?
How many pieces of paper are we talking about? We don't know. I mean, that's what the senators want to know. The 13-year-old apparently had 4 inches thick of documents in this zipper briefcase that she showed up. And teacher was a total narc and didn't talk to parents, right? We can imagine this happening in CPS. Didn't talk to parents about daughter showing up with the confidential briefcase, but totally called the authorities on the daughter. But showed up for show and tell because daughter had a left behind briefcase from the Carter press secretary from a presidential debate. And yeah, big time problems.
13-year-old kid's dad found him in a hotel room and she took him to school. Great story. Coming up, do you know what the fifth article of the Constitution says? We're going to cover that 5 minutes from now.
But at the end of the day, our mission now is to restore the credibility and integrity of this institution of which the Speaker has so gravely smashed and destroyed.
That dude should win an Oscar. Eric Swalwell. He's a little bitter this morning because House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has said, hey, people like you and the racist Ilhan Omar, you guys aren't going to sit on committees. You're just not going to. And remember, people like Swalwell and the other folks not allowed back on the committees say, well, this is political retribution. Yeah, this is the ball game. This is how it works, dude. But, man, that's just incredibly.
Of which the Speaker has so gravely smashed and destroyed.
He's destroyed this institution. He should be nominated for an Oscar. I mean, a lot of fanfare this week. Oscar nominations came out this week, and we pay no attention to those, except I was kind of surprised, not surprised to see Top Gun Maverick nominated, because usually it's a lot of those mainstream movies, they don't get nominated no matter how good they are. They really don't. That was kind of a surprise, but not a surprise the way that moviegoing has kind of changed over the past few years with the advent of streaming and, of course,
and Tom Cruise.
And Tom Cruise.
Come on.
And the government pandemic of regulations that started in 2020, so it changed how we went and saw movies. There's a local kid who's been nominated for like 8 or 9 Oscars, 9 of them. Daniel Dreyfus was part of the production team behind the German title All Quiet on the Western Front, which was nominated for cinematography, international feature film, production design, among other categories. And this was produced by a former high school student here in mid-Missouri, Hickman High School alumnus.
That's cool.
Daniel Dreyfus. Kudos to the Columbia Public School District for that student getting 9 Oscar nominations. We do highlight the good when there is good. Welcome into the show. Wake up, mid-Missouri. There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
I got a question. I'm going to ask you, John. I'm going to ask you something, too, and I'm going to ask Hannah. Just so you know, I did not know the answers to any of these either, okay? So don't. I don't.
Or is it a test? We're taking
kind
a pop quiz?
What? Yeah, it's a pop quiz.
Come on.
We need some. Is there quiz music? I wish when I was a kid, I remember you'd watch the game shows, and every time there was a pop quiz question or whatever, the game show would play music, and I always would tell Mr. Final Jeopardy. I had a teacher, Mr. Hancock, 3rd grade. Whenever I'd act up in class, he'd pick me up by my belt and walk me out the class while I had all 4 dangling. But I would say, Mr. Hancock, maybe we would do better at these quizzes if you played some music like they do on the TV when we're being quizzed. Like game show quiz music.
Like Jeopardy music?
Like Jeopardy music, maybe.
You got it?
How cool would that be? Anyhow.
We don't have any money to wager like Final Jeopardy. All we have is Hannah's salary, which you like to wager.
I have a cheese stick.
There we go.
No, it's still in the wrapper.
So I'm going to ask you all, you Marsh, too. There's producer Hannah. Brian Houseworth is fortunate. He's preparing news right here. He's hiding. I'm not taking this quiz. But just I offhand, now, if you would have asked me some of these questions, like in the 5th and 6th grade, I would have known at least 2 out of the 3. I would have known. In the 6th grade when I was studying this stuff. You asked me today, I don't recollect, but it has to do with a nominee that Joe Biden says, hey, this person might be good on the court. And then, of course, when you get nominated to fill any kind of position, you got to go through the confirmation hearings. Mixed bag. A lot of times, hey, there's good stuff that you can really find out, but it's the pomp and the circumstance, and you have, lawmakers that sit on the elevated dais, and you've got that person down there that you're looking at and peppering them with questions and all that, and it gets kind of showmanship sometimes. I wish we could clean it up and do it differently, but
there were some Trump nominees that had some rough confirmation hearings.
Oh, yeah.
I recall.
This is the Louisiana Senator Joe Kennedy. He is questioning Shamel Majelkrin. Sorry, I can't get her name. Jelkrin. I'm trying to say it with confidence, man.
Fast and with confidence.
Jelkengren. Shamel Jelkengren. But I'll ask you first. Steph, do you know what Article 5 to the U.S. Constitution is?
Yeah, I think.
You know? Okay.
Maybe.
Steph, or Hannah, offhand, Article 5, U.S. Constitution.
I'm pretty sure.
Really? Maybe I'm the only dumb one here. Marsh?
Oh, I think that's what I was doing. I was thinking the right to not testify against yourself or whatever.
Plead the fifth. Yeah, that's different. And then there's the Article 5 of the state constitution, which deals with the judiciary, which is different from the U.S. Constitution.
So you're listening, whether you're listening on the apps, which you can download easy. You can go to the websites, kwos.com, 939theeagle.com. You can download them through the website or just get on your phone, get in the App Store, download the apps. You can also listen online, like when you get into work and you sit at the computers all day. You get online, you can just click Listen Live. It's real easy to do. So do you know, I'm asking you now, do you know what Article 5 of the Constitution is? Offhand, I did not.
More importantly, if you were trying to get an appointment, maybe you would have gotten some flashcards, because there's only 7, right? And you maybe you would have studied up a little bit before the big hearing.
Wait, so Steph thinks that she knows what it is. So tell us.
Should we do the audio first?
You should do the audio first.
Should I say the position that she has been nominated for?
Sure.
Okay. This is the judge, Shamel Jelkengren. She currently serves on the Spokane County Superior Court. She has been nominated to serve, I think, on the in the Western District Court of Washington, the state of Washington. Confirmation hearings yesterday. Senator Joe Kennedy from Louisiana.
Tell me what Article 5 of the Constitution does.
Article 5 is not coming to mind at the moment.
Okay. How about Article 2?
Neither is Article 2.
Okay.
So, and then there's one more question. I didn't know what these were offhand.
There's only 7. And most judges are like, I'm committed to the Constitution. I'm sure we could find audio of her saying that somewhere. Like, how can you be committed to the Constitution if you're not sure?
Stage fright, maybe?
Okay, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Is it stage fright? Do you get nervous as somebody who sits on a bench and judges a lot of things? Do you get nervous being in front of lawmakers, being asked, I don't know, middle school type questions about the Constitution? See, then again, I'll go back to
stuff you should be taught in school.
And I probably did it in 6th grade. You probably could have asked me. Oh yeah, Article 5. Here's what it is. It's the right to not incriminate yourself. Oh no, wait. That's the fifth. That's the Fifth Amendment. That's not the Constitution. I would have gotten it right. It's not an article. Article 5 of the Constitution, Steph.
Talks about amending the Constitution.
All right.
If you're in Missouri, it's Article 12. But yes, how do you amend the Constitution?
2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate is the way the language starts there. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution
deals with the executive branch.
Shouldn't, I would think.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what kept him from being president.
But as somebody that Joe, in his infinite wisdom, is nominated to serve a pretty hefty position, I would think, and maybe shame on me for thinking that, I think you would know the answers to those questions.
That would be something I would put on my flashcards before my hearing, but I'm not nominated for a judge.
A refresher course.
Maybe.
A reminder. All right, there's more.
Do you know what purposivism is?
In my 12 years as an assistant attorney general and my 9 years serving as a judge, I was not faced with that precise question. We are the highest trial court in Washington state, so I'm frequently faced with issues that I'm not familiar with.
So that's the producer Hannah's defense. When you don't know an answer to a question, you say, my research has not bore that out yet.
Yeah, that was the old FFA response.
You answer a different question.
Or that.
Like John Marsh. John, do you know what the 5th article of the Constitution is? And his answer is, yeah, it's the one that gets confused with the 5th Amendment to the Constitution. Good answer, by the way, John, without answering the question. That was good. That was awesome. So she doesn't know what purposivism is. It is the study of purposive. I was shocked that she didn't know that. I thought it was...
It's about like constitutional interpretation. So a lot of people have heard a lot about textualism. You talk about like Scalia and everyone like, look at the text of the Constitution. Let's go back and look at the text. And when people talk about proposivism, it's a statutory construct, or not statutory, an interpretation method where you look at like what was the purpose of the, it's different from textualism. Rather than looking at the text, you're like, okay, what was the purpose of enacting this provision?
Which is always interesting when people say, well, that's not what the forefathers intended. Part of me wants to say, well, were you there? Do you know what they intended? And I know we can go back and read their writings and what they thought, but would they have thunk, 200 plus years later? Because how many times, by the way, have we amended? We have changed the Constitution. We have amended it. We have changed it. And I always think it's an interesting discussion about, well, how is it interpreted? What did they intend? Well,
it's a super fascinating discussion, and you get into, well, the legislature doesn't enact meaningless provisions, and if they put a single word into the statute, then they for sure meant it, and they don't ever enact anything without purpose, and they intended every word of every statute. And then, on the federal government side, well, they put out a 1,000-page bill an hour before they enacted it. So did they intend every word?
What was their intent
right
200 plus years ago? Coming up a few minutes from now here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, Jefferson City man sentenced for assaulting a cop. What's the sentence for that when you assault a first responder, and a cool way for you to help first responders? Coming up just a few minutes from now, Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 93.9 The Eagle, 104.5 News Radio, 950 KW.
lawmaker for 8 years, it seems very, very clear that the school district should have been open that day. There's no requirement for an appointment in state statute, and their own policy is in conflict with their own procedures they had published for that time period.
Former State Rep Chuck Basie and wants to be Columbia Public School Board candidate in that legal issue with the Columbia Public School District. It's going to be in court on Monday. Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. By the way, coming up 7:10, local State Rep Dave Griffith is going to be joining us. One of the things he is incredibly passionate about is our veterans and mental health as it relates to veterans and mental health as a whole. Also, legislation as it relates to electric vehicle chargers. In Missouri. Some interesting stuff. He's going to be joining us 7:10 here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Bell, producer Hannah. I am Branden Rathert. Jefferson City man sentenced for assaulting a cop. John, what's the story on this? Yeah, 12 years in the Department of Corrections. Good. Now, you talk about these first responders, not just firefighters, not just cops, EMTs, and highway workers. And then the 911 operators. My goodness. If you ever have the opportunity in life to get a tour of a working 911 call center or talk to a 911 operator, my gosh, you got to hear their stories. That's why I'm excited. There's a big event coming up for first responders, first responder support. It's a cool event. It's coming up in February, and this is something you can take part in. As a matter of fact, I want to bring in Rick Rowden. He is with First Responder Support, an event coming up in February. We're excited about this. It's something kind of unique here.
Something that I've really never seen done. I've been in nonprofits a long time, but we're auctioning off the opportunity to sit with what we're calling celebrity host. There's two different areas. One is celebrities. The other is our first responder leaders. So you can go online at firstrespondersupport.net, go to the auction page, and you can actually bid to sit with Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, Moon Choi, Senator Caleb Browden. We have Adam Boster, who's a local filmmaker. We've got guy from your station.
Cosmo from our Y.
My goodness, yeah.
That's all right. I forget his name too. Cosmo from the Y107 morning show.
Yeah, Cosmo and Kat, and so it's really cool because everybody has a lot of different interests, but just an opportunity to have an evening where you can sit with these people. The base cost of a seat is $100,
and it's the experience. So not only, and first responder support is what they do. Is anybody that's a first responder, sometimes they have issues in life that they can't always go to, like HR in the police department. Like, sure. You know what I mean? Like, I can't because. And that's one of the many things they try to do, whether it's financial support for families, things that are outside, because there's a lot of resources. But then there's some things that aren't covered, and that's what they're trying to do. The website is firstrespondersupport.net. Go and check out the You Have My Heart event. And you can go, and if you want, listen, you pay $100 and you can sit like with Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe.
Oh, that's fun.
Bend his ear on some stuff. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Caleb Browden, our good buddies Cosmo and Kat, Y107 morning show. Chief Jeff Jones, which would be cool. Sheriff Dwayne Carey in Boone County. He's the one Democrat I keep voting for. People say, I vote all you vote all Republican? No, I don't. 99.9% I do because they're the better candidate. But people say, well, who's the Democrat you vote for? I say, well, there's a sheriff in Boone County. His name is Dwayne Carey. He's a Democrat.
He's great.
He is. And people go, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot that he's a Democrat. Here's the answer I get. because he's so good at what he does, and he's this is the law, and we're going to follow it, and he is proactive, and he's honest. When you talk about some crime areas, whatever county it is, he's honest. He's not afraid to say, well, it's happening in this zip code, and look at what's happening there, and that's why people, I think, still think he's a Republican sometimes, because he's honest, and he's good at what he does.
Yes.
State Rep Dave Griffith going to be joining us 7:10. What's happening in Jefferson City that can affect veterans when it comes to mental health? We're going to be covering that, and electric vehicle charging stations. Statewide, we're covering that too.
Sources are telling CNN that the FBI's unprecedented search of President Biden's Delaware home followed very high-stakes talks between the Justice Department and Biden attorneys, and the department was prepared to seek a search warrant.
So that's kind of new this morning. So here's what I'm gathering. So this was apparently the Department of Justice says we are prepared to get a search warrant to go into the house and see what we can find. Now, this was prior to the latest batch of documents that were found over the weekend.
Whose documents again? Because there's so many, I'm losing track.
It is Biden's. These are the ones found in his underwear and sock drawer. So here's what I'm thinking. So a week ago, as you and I were sitting here talking about this, there were some high-stakes conversations happening between Team Joe and the Department of Justice, and I'm guessing it sounds like the Department of Justice was saying, well, this is that important, or we know something that if you don't give us access, we are going to issue a search warrant. That's kind of what it tells me, is that somebody knew, hey, and you better clean this up. Those materials were supposed to be returned to the government. They weren't. So that's what I'm taking out of that. Maybe I'm taking too much out of it.
But remember, Biden was cooperating, and he voluntarily gave everything over right away. That was the story we got initially.
I cooperated after the midterms. What are you talking about, man? When you found those documents in my garage, the garage was locked. What's wrong with you people? I cooperated after the midterms, and my garage was locked.
After I hid the documents from the time that I was in the Senate.
Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. It's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
There's Mr. Brian Houseworth.
Good morning, sir.
John Marsh is here. There's Miss Producer Hannah.
Hello.
My name is Branden Rathert. By the way, getting ready to do What's Hot with Hannah, 7:25-ish. And today, What's Hot with Hannah has to do with...
cheese.
Right? Okay, 7:25. I'm anxious to hear this one. Right now, I want to welcome into the show Jefferson City, reps Jefferson City area, State Representative Dave Griffith. This guy is huge when it comes to mental health issues as a whole, but specifically as it relates to veterans. Mr. Griffith, welcome into the show. This is something that's been a hot topic in Jefferson City this week, in our state's capital. And I want to start here because we see some of these words like epidemic, dire, urgent. Actually, great story in the Jefferson City News Tribune on some of this stuff. Why are we using words when it comes to mental health for veterans? Why are we using words like dire and urgent?
Well, I think, first off, thanks for having me on the show. I think that one of the reasons those are being used is because the number of veteran suicide, and really the number of suicides we have across the state of Missouri, are heading in the wrong direction. And the legislation that's being proposed is really looking at ways that we can stem that, and ways that we can start to address mental health, ways that we can address suicide. And the hearings that we're having on the Health and Mental Health Committee, we talked about that 2 years ago in 2021. They had an interim committee that discussed this. Last summer, I had an interim committee that discussed veteran mental health and suicide. So I think the more that we talk about it, the more awareness that we have for the public, and that we start to realize that something's got to be done.
All right, and I agree. We talk about this like in bigger terms, and we know here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, we've always been big on make sure your mental health is all right. Don't be afraid to get help. What's one actionable item that we could do? We talk about we need to improve mental health care for veterans. What's an actionable item that we could do, Mr. Griffith?
Well, I think one thing we need to make people aware of the 988 number that's out there. I think that's a tool that can be used, that if you're in crisis and you need to talk to somebody, no matter what time of the day it is, 24 hours a day, that there's a number you can call and somebody you can talk to. That's the hardest step that somebody is taking when they're we're in that mental health crisis situation, is to ask for help. But if you reach the end of your rope and you really know that you've got to do something before you do anything to yourself, you can pick up the phone and you can call 988. I think one of the recommendations we had that came out of my committee this last summer is that the 988 funding is not where it should be, and we recommended that an additional $27 million be added to the Department of Mental Health's 988 system. I'm a little disappointed that wasn't included in the governor's budget, but it's something that needs to be done.
Mr. Chairman, we appreciate your time. One thing about it, you can try to put the money back in regardless of the governor's recommendation. You can ask Cody Smith to put that in, and I'll be interested to see if that happens and if lawmakers decide to vote against that, if they would decide against that recommendation, because clearly you've come out for that. I want to go back to Brandon's question. He asked a very good question about people using the term dire. There is a group called the Missouri Foundation for Health that testified for informational purposes about your bill. But they write this in one sentence here. They say that suicide is a public health crisis in the United States. They also say that here in Missouri, suicide rates have grown even faster than the national average. This is written by Jennifer Carter Dockler. Mr. Chairman, your response to her statistics and her written testimony, these numbers she provides are staggering.
They're revealing. They are very revealing, and this is something that the general public really doesn't know. I know that back in the 60s and 70s, when I was growing up, mental health was an issue then, but it was something that was kept behind closed doors. And I think that in the last 10 years, and especially in the last 5 years, we started to raise awareness about mental health and issues to let people know that it's not something that you need to hide. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's like any other disease that's out there. It needs to be treated. And unless we start finding ways and means that we can do that, the numbers are going to still be going in the wrong direction.
All right, our guest this morning, State Representative Dave Griffith. Dave Griffith reps the Jefferson City area. We're covering things like mental health awareness for veterans. Call that 988 number. Also want to talk about EV charging stations on a statewide level as it relates to counties and cities. Dave Griffith joining us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
It really is. And I talked to Don Mayhew, who was on the Appropriations Committee last year, and we got that $50 million last year for the Missouri Veterans Commission. And I've got legislation that's I filed this year, is HJR 12, that will really bring the Veterans Commission back to whole. The Missouri Lottery back in 1993, when we passed the lottery, I think one of the reasons it got passed was because we were going to give a portion of that money to education. And my HJR, my amendment to the Constitution would be that we would revisit that, rewrite that part of the section, and divide that money between the the Department of Education and the Missouri Veterans Commission. And let's say last year, and we'll just round numbers, they gave back $400 million to education. And if we were to divide that in half and give $200 million to education and $200 million to the Missouri Veterans Commission, that would make the Missouri Veterans Commission whole. That would give them and bring them back into a line item in the budget. The education receives over $10 billion a year. $200 million is not going to make or break the education, but it will make the Missouri Veterans Commission back whole to where it should be.
Now, tell me more about this EV situation. It's particularly here in mid-Missouri. We've had some issues in Jefferson City. The city wants workforce housing. They want us to redevelop the downtown falling down properties. Yet local governments want to put restrictions on developers that would raise the price of their bottom line. And it sounds like they want, hey, develop this property, but if you're going to do it, hey, we need these expensive EV charging stations. So what's the legislature doing about that?
Well, Jim Murphy had filed a bill last year, and really it's a common sense bill to try and block those municipalities from doing that. And the reason it is, if you're building, he referred to it as if you have a supermarket that's going in, and you've got to have so many charging stations there, that the onus of putting those in there is put on the business themselves. So it's an unfunded mandate. So if you're going to mandate somebody to do something, you've got to be able to provide funding for it. I was really surprised at some of the testimony that took place on that, and some of the reasons. Of course, the Sierra Club came out in favor of that, which was no surprise at all. And so I think that what Murphy is trying to do, and what we are trying to do, is to really have an even playing field. And if you're going to mandate that, then the cities need to buck up some money.
And the other issue, I think, Representative Jim Murphy, I heard him say, he's a Republican, reps St. Louis County, sponsoring the bill. He says, when we look at electric vehicles, are they the future? He said, maybe, probably, but not assuredly. And I agree with that. As much as I dislike electric vehicles, I know people get mad when I say that's good. Well, it'll just never work. They said the same thing about flight. They said the same thing when man talked about, let's fly to outer space. Let's land on the moon. People said, are you crazy? And here, but I get frustrated. I don't like electric vehicles. I would not buy one. The idea that governments are subsidizing, giving taxpayer monies to encourage you to buy electric vehicles is just wrong on so many levels.
And my understanding of how that's worked in the past is not only has like some of the utilities subsidized that to go into the parking lots because they get, some return on the charging, but then, your vehicle has to charge for 30 minutes. So, hey, you get to go into the Deerbergs or whatever, the grocery store, and spend some money. So they pay a little bit because they like the fact that you're shopping. I mean, that seems like a market solution rather than your local government forcing the person who's paving the parking lot or the developer. From
Dave Griffith, State Rep, Jefferson City area. Thank you so much for what you have done in the name of service to the state, to Jefferson City, and to your country over the years. And thanks for continuing to fight for our veterans. Anything else you'd like to add to be of service to the constituents here in mid-Missouri before we let you go this morning?
I just really want to commend our Speaker of the House right now, because we really have got things moving quicker than we have in the past. I think we've got committees are hearing. We're getting bills that are being presented. So I think that, I really look forward to this session. I think that some very positive things are going to happen, I think.
State Rep Dave Griffith this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. We are getting ready for What's Hot with Hannah. Just kind of some stuff off the beaten path. What's hot this morning, Hannah?
Cheese.
All right. Right?
Yeah.
7:25.
I don't know how else to talk about it.
Cheese. Good morning, 7:25-ish, which means it's
Should I drag it out to 7:26?
7:25. It's time for What's Hot with Hannah.
Well, yesterday we had a little bit of a debate, if you will, about cheese. Because I am pretty sure that I accidentally ate your cheese out of the break room refrigerator, and I feel really bad about it. Brandon brought in different cheese today to try. And what did you call it? Stout?
It's stout, man. That thing, if you don't watch it, it'll get up and walk out on you. And I don't eat a lot of cheese sticks. We got on this conversation about the dog yesterday, the canine. There's an investigation against this canine at a police station, and the dog was stealing cheese sticks. Allegedly.
Was eating his coworkers' lunches.
Not been proven guilty in a court of law yet.
No.
That dog. And so we had talking about cheese. Somebody stole my cheese sticks, which is funny because I never eat cheese sticks. Just happen to have them, and so bought some yesterday. I don't know why, but found some extra sharp white Vermont cheddar. It's woo.
We also, before the show even started this morning, so bright and early, Stephanie, we were arguing about what string cheese is because he kept asking me what kind of cheese I usually buy, and I just kept saying string cheese. And he was talking about all the different types he saw at the grocery store.
Flavors.
Yeah, and I said cheese sticks and string cheese are not necessarily the same thing.
And Hannah says, well, string cheese, it's the flavor. That's the flavor. It's string. I'm like, no, Hannah, my dear sweet Hannah.
It's the texture. I don't know.
It's not, string cheese is not a flavor. String cheese. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, I found a cheese-related What's Hot with Hannah story just kind of accidentally, and I thought it was fitting for today. There is a company called Sleep Junkie. They do lots of reviews on things like mattresses and pillows. They are doing a study on the effects of cheese on your dreams. So they are doing research into how eating different types of cheese can affect the weirdness of your dreams that you have.
Okay.
So the application has been open for a week, and they've already gotten 15,000 participants.
Yes.
And they're paying these people, Stephanie sounds excited, they're paying these people to eat cheese before bed every night for 3 months. And they supply them the cheese, and they get $1,000 out of it. They just have to report what their dreams were like.
John, I will buy you 90 cheese sticks or string cheeses, whichever you prefer.
They are different.
I will buy you 90 of those if you eat one before you go to bed at night and report on your dreams.
So,
in the KWOS newscast.
So y'all know I don't like cookies, and I have strong opinions about food.
And
However,
Santa Claus.
But cheese is on my
Puppies.
Cheese is on my yes list.
Birds.
And Jesse Kelly tweeted out, and he said, "Screw ricotta cheese and screw all of you who are keeping them in business. That rancid filth has ruined more dishes than I can count." And I tweeted back at him, and I said, "I haven't met a cheese that I didn't like." And I recently went to a restaurant, and they had a fromagère, which is like a sommelier who's a person who does wines. But I didn't even know this was a thing, but you can be a person who's like a sommelier for cheese. You can be like the cheese connoisseur.
Can you imagine making that your career?
I want that job. Yes.
So Wake Up Mid-Missouri, Stephanie Bell, and Fromagère Hannah.
I'm the big cheese around here.
John Marsh. Tribal politics. We're going to sit down and have an interesting conversation. Coming up with Keith Simon, Truth Over Tribe. I hope you'll join us for this conversation. It's coming up 5 minutes from now.
Bribery.
Rudy, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of it
I
right now.
taught law. You're going to listen.
You want to say I won't cover it because I'm like this, right? You say,
man, when I
now
watch
you
the
won't give me the
introduction to your
proof.
show, I'm not going to give you proof like
Now-
the stupid New York Times story the other day.
Now
right?
listen, if
Did you cover that?
if
How the Times really screwed up the other day?
listen, if the
Did you cover it?
If the complaint.
All right, that's just a little sampling of what we see oftentimes on the cable news networks. They do these roundtables. That's the start of an epic battle that we will spare you from. A couple years ago, Giuliani versus CNN. And they were talking about some articles, probably unfavorable to Trump several years ago, and it devolves into a shouting match instead of getting to truth, potential agreements, or maybe seeking to understand. One of the things we want to cover this morning, Keith Simon is joining us in studio here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to cover here at the top before we get into this conversation. Keith Simon is from the Crossing Church. We're not talking about the Crossing Church. He has a book that he's written with a professional colleague and friend of his regarding truth over tribe. Talking about basically, we pick tribes instead of truth. I'm not here to sell a book. I don't want to do that. And I don't want to make this about religion. Not to say that maybe religion won't come into the conversation, but I want to cover that stuff from the top. The other thing I do need to mention, so we've been working on this for a while. We started this conversation in November, and the timing has just worked out to where it is. Several listeners have sent me info regarding an opinion piece that Newsweek, Columbia Public School District, in their shoddy handling of that whole incident last week regarding taking little kids to a city-sponsored event that featured drag performers, is getting national coverage. It's in Fox News. It is now in Newsweek as the calls continue for the superintendent to resign. And he should, because it's about the kids. And that's the thing that's frustrating for me personally. But I need to say this in interest. I learned last night, and this was published yesterday in Newsweek, your piece regarding CPS and that whole thing, correct?
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right,
it was published yesterday.
Okay. All right. So I just want to be clear here. I didn't know that was happening. The timing just happens to be rather fortuitous on this. And I don't know if we'll get into that conversation because I want to start here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stephanie Bell, John Marsh, Brian Houseworth, producer Hannah. I am Branden Rathert. The basis of this series, the book, Truth Over Tribes, basic. What is it?
Yeah, I think anybody who's been paying attention has noticed that our country has been fracturing. We see that even in our own community, that people are taking sides, that anger is dominating conversations, that instead of being able to work together toward a common good, we are in our own factions fighting with each other, that we don't really come to our positions rationally anymore. What we end up doing is saying, what does my tribe believe? And then believing the same thing they do. And when we were looking at the landscape of our country and, again, our city, even our church, we just said there's got to be a sense in which we stop putting our tribe above the truth. We've got to choose truth and work together instead of lobbing grenades back and forth to the other side.
So, and that's a challenge, I think, sometimes. It's like, and I liken politics to sports a lot. We pick a team, and regardless of what happens, we root for that team. And politics, my take on a lot, it's teams. When you talk about Republicans and Democrats, when there's documents discovered at Pence's house, it's different. That's tribalism. That's tribalism, in my opinion. This is different, and that's just an example. There's a point we have to be honest, I think, with ourselves about what we're doing and what we're saying. Do you agree with that?
Well, absolutely, because we're all probably part of the problem in ways that we don't recognize. I love your analogy of sports because we hate
we hate the Cincinnati Bengals this weekend.
We hate Tom Brady until he's on our team, and then we love Tom Brady, right? Or any player like that. And so I think what happens within political tribalism is that if you tell me what you believe about, say, abortion, I bet you I can tell you what you believe about gun control and climate and defunding the police and all these other issues. Why? Well, they don't really have any relationship with each other. You should come to your opinion independently. But That's not how we do it. We have a team, and our team has a whole set of positions, and then we tend to adopt those positions because our team did. That's what our team told us to do. And I think. Well, I think it's not very an honest way to handle our politics. It's not going to help us make much progress.
Our guest is Keith Simon. He's from Crossing Church. He's got this whole series, Truth Over Tribe. There's a book. I don't want to make this about Crossing Church. I don't want to make it about the book, just more of an honest conversation about politics and how we pick teams, and we stick to that even maybe potentially when we're wrong.
We talk a little bit about, or we talk a lot about self-awareness. And I think with tribalism, that might be one of the issues is how do I be honest with myself? You know, am I picking this position because I honestly believe it? Or, you know, so how do I bring that awareness to myself of, am I, you know, evaluating the facts and making a fact-based decision? Or am I just, you know, as opposed to, you know, picking with my team or my tribe or whatever else.
Right. Well, first, you got to admit that you're part of the problem. I mean, I'm quick to admit I'm a recovering tribalist.
That's a Taylor Swift lyric. I think we talked about that. It's me. I'm the problem, right?
I'm the problem. I'm a recovering tribalist. I remember sitting in the early 90s in a friend's backyard watching the election returns come in, and the Republicans took over the House of Representatives for the first time in like 40 years. And I ran around the yard screaming with a sweatshirt over my head in the middle of the night in the cold in November. And no alcohol was not involved. And because I thought if the Republicans could take charge, then things were going to get better. And, you know,
and they did.
I'm not so sure. I was a bit disabused of that. I thought that if we could get the right person elected, then it was all going to be okay. Well, that seems incredibly naive at this point in my life. I don't think that if we just get the right party in power, then everything's going to be fine, because each of these parties have their own problems. Each elected leader has their own problems, and they can't bring the change that we desperately need and crave. It's got to start with us.
But Democrats have more problems. But that's part of, and I am joking. I think I'm trying to make a point here. Our guest, Keith Simon, from Crossing Church, we're talking truth over tribe as it relates to politics this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Well, I think it's a great point. I think that some churches have used politics as a church growth strategy. They've gone hard right or hard left to try to attract people to their church. And unfortunately, it's taken the attention away from what the church should be focused on. Now, I think it's okay for church and Christians to participate in the political conversation, but I think they have to do it honestly, not as partisans, because when the church gets labeled as Republican or Democrat, depending on the church and what city it's in and whatever, I think it loses its credibility. It just becomes another special interest group.
I want to ask you a question, and I don't know what the answer is because we don't do pre-interview questions and stuff like this, but we're having an honest conversation.
You're making me nervous.
Well, and you should be.
Yeah, that is the appropriate reaction.
I'm wondering.
The last time Branden was in a room with a pastor, he took him down.
Oh, really?
With him off of a stage, knocked him
like
literally
WWE or MMA or what?
It was more or less I'm going down, I'm taking somebody with me.
Oh,
so
wow.
Here's what I was emceeing the governor's prayer breakfast a couple of weeks ago, and we were on this stage after the event was over, and it's me and the governor and this pastor Scott Watson from a church in Waynesville, Missouri, who is one of the speakers, along with Casey Wolf, the mascot for the Fox. Incredible if you ever get to see Dan Mears. Great speech.
He's a great guy.
He's incredible. And they're shifting us around on stage, and there's a curtain behind the stage, and they start backing up, and all of a sudden there's no more stage left, and I don't know it. Start to fall backwards. I grabbed the pastor, took him down.
You went down.
But isn't that what you're? Oh yeah, we fell.
Who
on
got
our
hurt?
backs.
Anybody?
Pride. But isn't that what you're supposed to do? Is to reach out
when you're going down.
Take somebody with you.
Pride goes before the fall. Well played.
Yeah. So that's that story. I want to ask you, and I'm going to make an assumption.
Okay.
Based on tribe and where you're from, where I'm from, that you probably don't get up in the morning and listen to Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's a correct
But I
assumption.
don't listen to any radio, so it's no insult.
But I want to ask you, how much at fault do you think some of the things that Stephanie Bell says here on the show, how much is she at fault for political tribe? No, seriously, I wanted to get your response to that. We'll do that like 5 minutes from now. If you can hang seriously, like this show that we do here, or talk as a whole. Here's the other issue I have. It's not.
Why are you looking at me again?
Because I might need you to get my back here.
Okay.
I think what we do here, personally, is a little different than most talk shows. We don't bang on the desk and complain for 3 hours. And we call out both sides, I think. I think we're pretty fair about that a lot.
We try.
Yeah. But the perception, the reputation of talk radio, it precedes itself now. To the point when people ask what I do for a living, I say, well, I'm in marketing.
That's the same for me. I don't tell people I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
So you and I were like bonding over this.
Right. I
Look
don't
at
tell
that.
Because here's what happens when I do say I'm a talk show host. They do this inevitably, especially in some cities here in Mid-Missouri. They go, "Oh, you're a conservative talk show host," which that's truth. Though it's that tribalism already because of the reputation of talk radio. But I do want to get your honest thoughts. If you can hang for like 5 minutes, I want to see how you answer that question. How much like we are at fault for some other questions we'll ask. Keith Simon, we are talking truth over tribe. Welcome to Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Interesting conversation with Keith Simon. Some of you might recognize his name, Crossing Church. We're not talking about the church, not talking about religion. We're talking about Truth Over Tribe. There's a book, not trying to sell a book. It's just the whole concept of this series that that Keith Simon has been doing along with a colleague is interesting. Truth Over Tribe as it relates to bitter partisanship in politics, and not just amongst politicians, us and neighbors. And we asked the pastor, I'm anxious to hear your answer. We talk about the reputation of talk radio, which bothers me personally because of what we have done. What we have, by the way, and I'm not gonna humble brag. I'm just gonna brag on what we have done, on what we've done here on Wake Up.
About going to the gym.
About what we've done here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri over the past couple of years, our coverage area. Now the new listeners, regretful Biden voters that have flocked to the show to try to figure out how things work. And that's not, I don't know who you voted for, not a dig, but I don't tell people I'm a talk show host. I say I'm in marketing. And then if I do eventually, I'm a talk show host, they do this. A lot of times I go, oh, you're a conservative talk show host. No, I'm a talk show host who happens to mostly have conservative, libertarian, independent points of view. How much do you fault what we do as a whole? And I know you said you don't listen to our show. How much do you fault what we do collectively?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question because I think that the incentive structures have been set up to undermine something that's really important in our community, and that's trust. So you can think about this in talk show hosts or mainstream media or cable news or social media. But the incentive structures for all those organizations are set up to keep people listening, to keep people engaged, to keep people outraged, frustrated, angry. I'm not making any comments about you. I'm just saying that's the way the incentive structure is set up. You need clicks. And so what do you need? You need clickbait. And maybe that's advertising for the show or a lead in or an ad for, the way a headline is written. You need people to click on that in order to make money. And there's nothing wrong with making money of a profit, but it often comes at the expense of undermining truth and trust.
And there's two things I want to highlight on a local level here. Good things. John, remember it was a couple of months ago we were at, I think it was a chamber event that John emceed. I think it was a chamber event. And we sat at a table that had local politicians that recently had done battle on some issues like employee housing, workforce development housing, i.e. affordable housing, whatever you want to call it. And it was a good, because at first, when they were all, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I want to be at this table. It never came out. Mayor Barbara Buffalo, Breonna Lennon, who have recently drawn the ire of a lot of conservatives. We've had I have great relationships with Breonna Lennon and Barbara Buffalo, and it never shows up. So I do want to make sure we talk about some of that good local stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a word that you used was truth, and it reminds me, and I say this quote, but it's in the Missouri Senate. It's on the wall, and it says, like, let free and fair discussion ever be the firmest friend of truth, right? And so have a healthy debate, right? Let's talk through the issues. And I remember we had the guest Demetrius Woods, and he said, hey, before I came on your show, I was talking to my people that I know, and they said, that Wake Up Columbia and Wake Missouri, I don't know that you should go on there because they think this, and they stereotyped us. But anytime we can get someone on, like Mayor Buffalo, we might disagree on the issues, but I think ultimately we're better for it, and our community is better for it, even if we don't all agree.
No, I completely agree. We have to figure out as a community, as a country, how to have different beliefs but work together. And the first place of that to start is just getting to know people on the other side, because when you get to know people who disagree with you, what you see is they very well might be wrong, but they're not wicked. That Trump supporter you don't like, he volunteers at a homeless shelter. That progressive you think is ruining the nation, that's the one who brought you a meal when you had your baby. That people want to work together for the common good, but you have to get to know them in order to do that.
And separate, I think, the politics. Demetrius Woods, great story, former gangbanger, a lot of time in prison, full deal, and his people, black community said, don't come on the show. He's been on the show several times. Remarkable human being. He has changed his life. Remarkable heart. All right, we got about a $1:30 here, Pastor. It doesn't like to be referred to, Pastor. I'm sorry. Keith Simon is joining us. We are talking
author
Truth Over Tribe on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Well, I think clearly that younger generations, it seems like in the data, is showing that they are moving away from a traditional Republican Party values. But I don't know that they are less tribal. I think they might form their tribes around other issues. I don't think this is a problem of the right or the left. I think it is a human problem.
Okay. All right. And I love this, and we're going to have to wrap it up here. I love this from Chuck. I'm not a tribalist, but what if I'm always right? Chuck, thank you for the text, 874-9390. We appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for taking time. I can sit here and chat forever. Got to wrap it up here. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up, Randy Tobler, host of the Tobler Show, weekdays, 4 o'clock here. He's going to be joining us. Interesting pieces of legislation happening in Jefferson City that we want to cover. Stick around for that.
Sources are telling CNN that the FBI's unprecedented search of President Biden's Delaware home followed very high-stakes talks between the Justice Department and Biden attorneys, and the department was prepared to seek a search warrant.
CNN's Wolf Blitzer. So that's kind of new this morning. Apparently, the Department of Justice ready to seek a search warrant. And I think the thing that surprised me the most is that I didn't know Wolf Blitzer was still alive.
Shame on you.
Or on the TV. Randy Tobler hosts the Tobler Show today at 4 o'clock. Did you know he was still on the TV? Hello?
Who? Yeah, Wolf Blitzer? Yeah, I knew he was. Yeah, I keep an eye on those. I'm not a tribalist. I was listening to your last segment. It was good.
As a matter of fact, well, we're going to open up the... Go ahead.
I try to keep an eye on those on the other side to make sure that we don't fall into our myopic conservative knuckle dragging viewpoint, But yeah, Wolf has sort of faded into less prominence. Thank God.
As a matter of fact, you look at the cable news ratings, and truthfully, Fox News outperforms just about everybody. CNN is outperformed by the Home and Garden Network. That's a true story. You can look that up. Randy Tobler referring to our conversation with Keith Simon talking about truth over tribe. I think we might open the mailbag at 8:35 because we got some great comments on the text. This was it could have been more in depth. Would have liked to have had more time with him, but talking about truth over tribe and our teams and our tribes and how much we all of us to an extent push the team over the truth, and it's hard to do, especially when you sit in the chairs that Wake Up Mid-Missouri is sitting in this morning. Stephanie Bell, John Marsh, Brian Houseworth, producer Hannah. I am Branden Rathert. That is Dr. Randy Tobler, host of the Tobler Show, weekdays, 4 o'clock. Did you get to hear some of that conversation?
I did, and I think a lot of this revolves around, too, understanding our own biases that we really do have and trying to acknowledge. We can look at the same set of facts. I mean, Stephanie can speak to this as much as anyone. You look at the same set of facts, and one side of the bench in front of the judge says, I see it this way, and the other side of the law group, says I see it this way. So we've got to realize that as we enter these kind of discussions. I mean, look at the whole drag queen thing. Someone thought, a bunch of people, including the mayor and our local representative, and others thought that that wasn't an adult performance. Others thought it was. We have to look at the prism we're looking at things through.
And incidentally, and this was completely by accident, I do want to mention this CPS story and mostly their handling of it, the poor handling, the poor communication, which is consistent with that district. That story, so we think about this school district here in mid-Missouri. It's now gone national. Fox News is on it. Newsweek is on this story too. And Houseworth, quickly, two basically new pieces of information as it relates to this story.
Two very quick pieces. Number one, the second letter has been sent to the superintendent, Dr. Brian Yearwood, from AG Andrew Bailey. The AG kind of referenced this letter yesterday with the interview with Dr. Tobler here on the program. But basically, he says Yearwood cares more about indoctrination than education, and accused him of, quote, betraying the trust and confidence of the parents, end of quote. Second piece of information that is brand new, I did confirm with Senator Rowden, the Senate president, that he will meet this week. That means today or tomorrow with Yearwood and some school board members. He's not saying the date and time, obviously, it's going to be a private meeting, but it will be soon. It'll be this week.
So, I completely agree with the Attorney General, Dr. Yearwood, at the very least, if not further on down the totem pole there, should resign for various reasons. It's not just this. It has been the poor treatment of parents with what they're trying to do with these little kids in their school district. Dr. Yearwood, absolutely, positively. He should do like this, the school administrator in West Virginia, I think, who resigned. He resigned. Parents said, hey, you knew a 6-year-old brought a gun to school and you didn't do anything about it? You should resign. He did the right thing. He resigned. Yearwood should do the same. There was another superintendent just resigned in Chicago because parents did not like what happened with the program, and the parents said, you need to do this. He did the right thing. I would highly encourage, for the benefit, and it's not about me, it's not about even all this stuff. It's about the kids, and it's about us as a community. He has been nothing but divisive. He's basically lied on this show in that interview 2 years ago regarding CRT. He for the benefit of kids, he's got to go and do the right thing. As a man, as a human being, do the right thing.
Branden, and again, we will continue to see what happens. But obviously, the Attorney General wrote a very scathing letter. Randy, I want to ask you, and Brandon's seen this tweet as well. State Senator, former state representative, not state senator, he's running for the Senate, Stephen Weber, has really pounded on Caleb Browden, our Senate President pro tem, about the issue of LGBTQ. And he writes this, quote, "It ticks," this is on Twitter 2 days ago, "it ticks me off as a Colombian that when people stand up for the LGBT community in our state capital, the senator from Boone County doesn't stand among them. That needs to change. Thank you to all who stood up." End of quote. He's clearly upset that Caleb Browden did not attend the rally. Randy, your response to former Representative Stephen Weber's comments?
I think my response to him and anyone else who makes this about a trans issue would be to echo what Andrew Bailey told me last night on the program. He continued to talk about this performance with the transvestites, the drag queens, as being one that was a sexualized exposure for the children. And he said it 3 or 4 times in that way. He didn't say drag queen, he kept saying sexualized exposure, and that our children don't need to do that. And I said, so let me speculate, if they'd have had the Chippendales there, or let's say some Hooter girls there, that's very normative for probably most of the listeners in this audience, including women. I mean, that's considered a heterosexual entertainment, adult entertainment, and in one case in a dining venue in the other. I said, would you have opposed it as vigorously then? He said, absolutely. It's about sexualization of our children when they should be educated. And I think that was an important thing. And that's what I would tell the representative, former representative, is look, that's one issue. What is it to say that we just don't need to bring sexuality into the schools except for the consent of the parents, for instance, in a sexual education class concerning how reproductive organs interact to make babies, that kind of a thing. And secondly, what does where's the difference between the respect, the tolerance, the proper civil rights-wise treatment of these people? Where does that line end and the line and the sector of celebration begin? I think the people that want to they use words like we need to respect, we need to be tolerant. I think what they mean is we need to promote and we need to celebrate. And that's a far cry from just respecting that people have their differences.
You need to do what we are doing. I want to move on from this topic, but first I do want to mention Keith Simon, and we didn't know this was happening, from Crossing Church. Him and one of his colleagues wrote a letter, an opinion on this, that Newsweek, this story is national, Fox is on it, but this is in Newsweek. It is an incredible piece, and it deals very little, I think, in my opinion, as I read the opinion, it deals very little with drag queens and more about fostering trust in the community and how the Columbia Public School Districts, from its mouthpiece to its superintendent, how they have failed to foster trust in the community. People, we pay their salaries, by the way. That was the bigger point of the piece. I thought it was beautiful. I want to ask you this. Our guest, Randy Tobler, he hosts the Randy Tobler Show weekdays, 4 o'clock here on the radio station. There's a piece of legislation. I thought this was interesting. A couple of nearly identical bills would give direct access to physical therapists. So in other words, if I have issues, I want to see a physical therapist. Now, there are some, I'm oversimplifying it, but in effect, I could bypass a doctor. So it'd stipulate that if a physical therapist does not see improvement in a patient after 10 sessions or 3 weeks, whichever comes first, they would be required to consult with a physician. But I think as a whole, I like the idea of sometimes we need to eliminate doctors. Can't I just go to somewhere and say, doctor, I'm sick, I have a cold, give me some antibiotics, and I already think I know what your answer is. But what do you think about this particular piece of legislation as it relates to an extent, bypassing a doctor for physical therapy?
Branden, I'm not a tribalist when it comes to this. I catch heat from the doctor crowd a lot of times because I've said it openly in many venues. I'm sort of a licensure atheist, and the Cato Institute has done a lot of this, not only in the realm of doctors and medical practice, but grave diggers and hairdressers. When we have licensure and restrictions, it becomes turf battles and turf protection for various groups. On the other hand, the state does have an interest in protecting the public safety and making sure that, people that are doing what they claim they do are not harming the public. I tend to land on the side of access. Here, what we do have to consider about something. There's the potential, and I know of cases, although I know of cases where doctors have delayed and misdiagnosis. We call that medical malpractice. But there are cases when people have gone and they've been treated, for instance, another scope of practice issue. Lay midwives are legal in Missouri. And I've personally dealt with cases where patients have ended up at a lay midwife delivering in their garage or basement or on the sofa in their bedroom, I don't know where, in their living room. And, we have to bail them out because they weren't aware that there were twins. They weren't aware there were breech babies. And all of a sudden, it's a 5-alarm fire and they have to bring them to the emergency room. And outcomes often aren't as good as they could have been. When it comes to physical therapy, you'd imagine the scenario where someone has an ache or a pain or whatever, and if the first evaluation of that problem is by an individual, that individual in determining to do something is in essence making a diagnosis. Now, the bill that I saw that was filed last year, and as far as I can tell, it's identical. I haven't been able to read the whole text, but the summary reads the same. Of this physical therapy bill says that the physical therapist isn't supposed to diagnose. Well, if I'm out playing, football, tag football with Branden and the Wake Up Mid-Missouri crew, and I come in with a bad shoulder, it's probably just a shoulder problem. But if I have a spontaneous problem that happens, what's the chance that it's actually something else? And the diagnosis is not made, and then there's a delay. And, for a few weeks, is that going to result in a problem for the patient that wasn't diagnosed properly? At the end of the day, I think it's a buyer beware. Patients should be able to do what they want to do. But part of the problem with this bill, too, is it says that if there's been success and if there's been improvement in the case for, I believe it's 21 business days or 10 weeks or 21 business days, there's some provisions in there. Then there needs to be a consultation with a doctor who can then authorize ongoing treatment. I can tell you, I don't know many doctors that are going to say yes. They're going to say, I need to see that patient before I authorize more treatment because you're trying to turf the professional liability onto me. And so there's going to be a lot of turf battles there, and some of them legitimate. I think if they want to own it, let the physical therapist take control of it. No restrictions on anyone practicing. If your veterinarian wants to do brain surgery on you, let him do it. But let him or her own it.
I don't know about that last point, Randy. But you mentioned access, and I think we talk about what's going on in Mexico and these things that have gone on with hospitals and people in rural communities. And I think I live in Ashland, and we have some family medicine clinics. But for smaller communities, it is nice. We have a Mizzou therapy clinic right there in the YMCA, and I'm thinking, if I've got a shoulder problem, wouldn't it be nice if I could just walk into the Mizzou therapy clinic without having to go see the doctor first right there in my community and get some help?
Right. Yeah, I just don't think the bill should then say that if the physical therapist and you are happy that you need a physician to authorize it, because that essentially, if you're treating a pain that's actually a metastatic cancer in your bone and it felt better because some part of the physical therapy involves heat and some application of feel-good stuff, and it does feel good. I'm not saying it's not helpful. Are you masking a symptom of something worse? And I just think that there's that issue of who's going to validate it going on. I don't think you'll find doctors willing to do that. They're not going to own it without seeing you and making an opinion. Secondly, is your insurance company going to pay for it? It's because it's going to increase their expense, and that's going to be a more practical issue.
Tobler, 15 seconds. What's coming up on the Tobler Show today at 4?
Let's see. I think, Brenda Talon's going to weigh in on the spending that the government liked and we talked about. And then I think I'm hoping Dr. Ashley Emmel will join us if we can rip her free from her chiropractic practice
coming
for a
up
minute.
4 o'clock this afternoon here on the radio station. Thank you, Randy Tobler. Coming up, Morning Bell business news, little twist only Stephanie Bell can give us. What do you have for us?
I think we should do some Tesla news.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
It really has.
All right, we're going to do Tesla news. Steph crushes on Elon Musk. It's coming up 5 minutes from now. Hello, 827. It's time for the Morning Bell. Business news, little twist only Stephanie Bell can give you.
Stock futures this morning are up. Also up in the short term is Tesla stock from yesterday. They had an earnings call, and things are looking pretty good. Now, the long game for Tesla has not been very good. Their stock is way down. People were concerned with Elon buying Twitter, which apparently, Hannah, he had a Twitter tweet problem yesterday.
He did. He said he changed his name on Twitter, and then Twitter wouldn't let him change it back.
But, like, he's in charge, right? What did he change his name to?
Mr. Tweet.
Fair. He should change it to, like, President Tweet, I think. Anyway, so he's officially Mr. Tweet and can't get his people to change it back, but he fired everybody too. So maybe he should hire some of those people back to get it changed. So a lot of Elon Musk news, but yeah, they had an earnings call. They had record profit. So after the earnings call, obviously Tesla stock took, is bumping up. But more importantly, they announced, I think yesterday, that one of their models, they're slashing prices. And so $20,000 by about $20,000. And I thought that was really interesting, Brandon, because you always talk about, I love that new Hummer, except it's the EV Hummer, except it's $100,000. And, for me, like, I really don't care about the environment. I'm sorry. I just don't. But, like, I cloth diapered my kids, not because I was a greenie and I was worried about all the disposable waste, because I was cheap, because it was a better financial decision for my family. And so I'm wondering, like, how many conservatives out there are looking at SUVs and thinking, and now they're saying, yeah, like for some people, Tesla is going to be cheaper in the SUV market than a regular car. And I'm thinking, well, then, yeah, if it's the cheaper one, sure, I'd buy it. What about you?
I don't know, because then I'd look at long-term cost as it relates to how long before I'm going to have to replace the battery, how much is it going to charge it. And here's the other thing. I'm willing to pay extra for good toilet paper, good cheese. And what else is on the list, John? Convenience. I will pay a little bit more to fly out of our Columbia Regional Airport.
For sure.
Because of the convenience. And right now, electrical vehicles is just not convenient.
Model Y base unit now priced at $52,999, down from $65,999.
And I wouldn't buy the Hummer #1 because it's electric and it's also
100 G's.
Hey, we're going to open up the mailbag coming up 5 minutes from now.
I'm doing good, AFC Championship week, ready to go. It's doing good, I've had a few days of treatment, a few days of rehab. Excited to get on the practice field and kind of test it out and see where I'm at, but it's feeling good so far.
Patrick Mahomes yesterday in Kansas City as they were working out. He was back at the practice field saying, I'm doing all right. He said some other stuff in this news conference. I don't know if Marcia had a chance to check it out, but it reminded me, I need to give Patrick Mahomes some marriage advice.
Oh, boy.
And I don't know whether I should do it today or do it tomorrow on a feel good. And it was something he said in the press conference. I'm like, Patrick, no, dude. That's not how you say that, man. But he was talking about his wife, Brittany. And I thought, actually, it might be good advice for Hannah and her fiance.
You know how much I love it when you give me marriage advice.
Right. How many times have you been married?
None.
How many times have I been married?
Twice.
So I've got more experience at this. How long were those marriages combined, the two of them?
Like, what, a year?
Oh, come on, man. It was like, let's see, a year, and then, 99 to 2000. Well, maybe not even 3 years combined, the two of them. You know what the problem was in those marriages?
You?
Yeah, it was. And it was. I shouldn't have been married in the first place. I really should not have. But I kind of, I hold them kind of responsible, too, because when they asked, they both said yes. So, right?
That's true. Yes, that's awesome.
I don't behave that way anymore. I just don't do it. But Patrick Mahomes, he said something in this press conference yesterday, and I'm thinking if you're a married person or in a relationship, especially if you've been married for a while and you're like, okay, I figured out how this works. Something you should never, ever do. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. Welcome into the show. There's Mr. Brian Houseworth.
I think and I think he talks a lot about lifestyle issues too, and he's kind of an entertaining guy. Of course, Patrick Mahomes from Texas Tech. I think there's something else that's kind of unique, just more of for the casual fans out there that may not necessarily the X's and the O's. The NFL today is actually taking its show on the road on Sunday, and they do that periodically. Hopefully the weather will cooperate, although there is a chance of some frozen precipitation on Sunday across the state, but they're doing that show, which I think is just kind of interesting that they're going to be doing that. It started off with Brent Musburger and Irv Cross, and it's evolved different hosts. It's a little different than it used to be. I preferred the more old school style, but even for a casual fan, I do think people will enjoy it. And it's pretty unique to have a show like that outside. Basically, they set up a studio out on the side of the field. It's kind of neat to see.
Kind of cool, and it gives Missouri some good coverage, too. That's the other thing.
It's huge. It really does.
And people will accuse me of being a cheerleader, not a cheerleader in the football sense of the word, but a cheerleader for where I live in mid-Missouri and for the state of Missouri, because we want the community to do well, want Missouri to do well.
Sure.
And I think, because, by the way, on a national level, we are not getting good press, and you can thank
not here.
Not here. Columbia Public School District, again, dragging down our community. Newsweek has picked up on the story. And what I love, it's an opinion piece in Newsweek. It focuses more on the communication and how leadership, i.e. Dr. Yearwood, has sowed distrust within an entire community. He absolutely should resign, and there's others. He is not the only one. So that's the negative press that we're getting in Missouri right now. So NFL Sunday, Patrick Mahomes coming to save the day. There's Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, producer Hannah is here. My name is Branden Rathert. And what do we say when it comes to sports? The Bengals, they're a pretty good football team. They've won last year and last week against another very good team, Cincinnati Bengals, I think, including these playoff wins. They've won, 10 games in a row now? They're pretty good. But what are we going to be saying Sunday at Arrowhead? We're going to be shouting, Bengals suck, Bengals suck, aren't we? Yeah. And they don't suck, but we're going to say it because it's that team thing, like in politics. And that's going to bring us into today's mailbag.
Letters.
All right, we don't get any letters.
I get letters.
When was the last time you got a letter, John?
So many letters.
Yeah. We get text at 874.
I'd even read mail from a cow.
9390. 874-9390. Sometimes we get Facebook messages. And by the way, when it comes to the text and Facebook messages, producer Hannah, she does really good in trying to respond to a lot of the Facebook stuff that we get. But I just want to let you know that we don't always get to, whether it's text or so. I just want you to know, especially, and it's always, if you've never texted the show before, you're especially who we love here. I don't know why I get excited when I see somebody that's never texted before. But I love that whenever there's somebody new that's texting. So we love your text, 874-9390. But there are some times where between everybody here on the show, we just simply cannot respond to all of them. Either that or we don't like you.
No. Fake news.
It's one of the two. So I was talking about, Sunday, we're going to be saying Bengals suck. And they don't. They really don't. But it's that we do it because the Chiefs are our team. That's our tribe. That's what we do. And we had and I wish we could have chatted with this guy some more. His name is Keith Simon. Now, although it had nothing to do with Crossing Church, he is from Crossing Church, but he's got this whole series about truth over tribe. And there's some religious tones in it, but basically talking about how we dislike other people in our lives, maybe because they hold different political beliefs. And it's just a really tough conversation, for me at least, when we talk about being honesty. And you'll be able to catch that on the podcast that goes up after the show. You'll be able to listen to the condensed version of Wake Up Mid-Missouri on the websites, kwos.com, 939theeagle.com. It was in the 7 o'clock hour. John, any interesting, and we do have some texts about that I want to share. One or two takeaways for you from that thing as a whole? And here's the thing, and I do agree with that because I see it all the time. For example, in USA Today or even the Associated Press, and we've spent a lot of time over the years because we talk about the slant of the media. And for our newer, regretful Biden voters, for our new younger listeners that we've accumulated since the tragic events of January the 20th of 2021, we try to highlight specific examples. So when somebody says mainstream media is their slant, we try to point out here's specific examples. And you're right, but here's the challenge with that. You know who's writing the news? Human beings.
It's not ChatGPT?
Not yet. That's scary, by the way. Sunday morning, I was telling Steph Bell about this. She's the one that turned us on to this ChatGPT. They had like a 10-minute piece on the implications of ChatGPT, not just in schools, but the whole artificial intelligence thing as a whole. But human beings are writing the news. And let's say ChatGPT one day does write the news. Guess who is programming ChatGPT or programming artificial intelligence? Isn't it human beings that are programming that stuff, developing that stuff?
It's the aliens.
Couple of responses to our conversation regarding truth and tribalism. Stephanie from Ashland, not that Stephanie, says, great topic. I'm a conservative, independent listener, and I appreciated hearing this topic. Chris, and I love this from Chris. He says, truth is something difficult to come to when folks are taught that truth is individual and perception is reality. When truth is comfortable, it may be truth. And I agree with that. One of the things, there's very few things in life that I get really irked about. I get irked when I hear the phrase, well, perception is reality. That is not accurate. That's a lie. Perception is not reality. Your perception is your reality. It's not reality. It's your reality.
Did you see Jack's text?
Yeah.
He said, can't be a tribalist these days. That would be cultural appropriation and make me non-woke.
Right? And here's the thing, and this kind of came up during the conversation. It's like, well, how do you have conversations when you're politically opposed and what they are politically opposed to is so dangerous, or when we're always right? So even in talking about tribalism, it's hard to get honest about that because, and we saw some of that in some of the text. Now, though, that is from listener Sandy. Now the left, and I agree, with their no compromise on anything attitude, they would be tribal. Yeah, I agree with that. that it seems to be it's the other side. As a conservative, independent, libertarian kind of dude, it's like, yeah, there is a party, there is a political party, there is a mindset, these progressives that, yeah, man, if you don't think like we do, we hate you. We believe in climate change, so we're going to go destroy $1 million paintings in museums. We think cops kill us because we're black. We're going to go and shut down traffic and destroy parts of Seattle. Yeah. You don't see you don't see the other side doing that stuff. I almost said our side, John. I can't do this. I can't do this truth over tribalism, man. It's killing me. All right, let's move forward. So tomorrow on a Feel Good Friday, a couple of cool things we're going to be doing on the show. We try to celebrate some of the cooler things happening in the news. We also do winners and Josh Hawley, winner of the week.
I hate to say it, but yeah.
Yeah. He came up with an act that has to do with Congress members and insider trading, and he worded it so it comes, because, they all like the cute acronyms in Washington, D.C. It's this act, it's that act, but he worded the act so that it's called the Pelosi Act because of the dastardly things her husband did, potentially using inside information to benefit their wealth. So Josh Hawley will definitely be one of my winners of the week tomorrow. The other thing that we'll be doing that this time tomorrow, Feel Good Friday. And we also wear red on Fridays, and we tell you that now, not because we're bragging, but there's a reason we like to let you know about wearing red, which we do to remember everyone deployed.
Yeah, we like to tell you about it so that maybe if you're listening right now, you put red on in the morning to join us. I try to recruit a couple of our coworkers every week, and I will shame them on Fridays if they're not wearing red, even if they don't know about it. And sometimes the next Friday I see them wear red. So I'm slowly growing it here at Zimmer.
And your efforts, incidentally, have not gone unnoticed. All right, coming up before we get into the Gary Nolan show, some leftovers. Open up the fridge and see what's in there.
Here's a big old serving of leftovers. Enjoy.
Leftovers, some of the things we did not get a chance to get to during the show this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. We try to do it this time every morning before we get into my dad's favorite show. And one of the common questions we get, as a matter of fact, tonight I'm going to be in Fulton. There's a Chamber of Commerce event. So if you're in the Fulton area and you're at the Chamber event, please look for a Cynthia Shreen. I think everybody in Fulton knows the Cynthia Shreen. Yeah.
The legendary
Cynthia Shreen is her name. If you know Cynthia, if you spot her and you see the short, chubby, balding dude next to her, that'd be me. The tall, handsome guy with the nice set of hair, that would be her husband. Or Cynthia's husband. Yeah.
Oh, are you third wheeling the Shreens?
So one of the questions that we get a lot when we're out and about, people say and I've been getting this for years, people say, is your dad's favorite show really the Gary Nolan show?
Yeah,
Well,
it is.
It is. And that stems from a story several years ago, me trying to show my dad, who's a brilliant computer programmer, doesn't know.
Wait, I keep forgetting that. Yeah. And it makes your, how do I want to word this?
Technological pedigree.
It makes your tech issues that you have on a daily basis even funnier.
You know what? And that's
ironic, perhaps.
Yeah. When I was 8 or 9 years old, my dad, you used to be able to get these tiny, archaic, by today's standards, laptops back in the early 80s. Yeah, and I used to help my dad. I used to screw around with computer. I could program a computer a little bit, basic programming, like if X equals Y, then go. And I could write lines, as I recall, lines of very simple, basic computer code when I was 8 years old. I think it's even a predecessor to that.
Your dad probably was so excited he thought he had another computer programmer on his hands.
I don't know what happened. I try. I really do. It's not that I'm not interested.
You try when you want to.
Yeah, there's probably some truth to that. I just can't get my head around a lot of it. And I love this. This for leftovers. I want to say hello to David from Fulton. We were talking about tribalism, and here's an example where we tribe over truth. What are we going to say Sunday outside Arrowhead, John? What are we going to be shouting? Yeah. And Bengals suck. Well, as a point of fact, the Bengals don't suck. They're pretty good. They've won 10 games in a row. They're on the verge of potentially going to their second Super Bowl 2 years in a row, but we're going to... David from Fulton says, go Bengals. I never root for the Chiefs. We appreciate that.
Speaking of Joe Burrow, he's very popular on TikTok right now with the ladies. I guess the ladies are just now figuring out that he's good looking. But no, Joe Burrow is very popular on TikTok right now.
So we've talked about state legislatures, universities banning TikTok because it's owned by the Chinese and they're using it for nefarious purposes. Josh, you got a story. Josh wants to go. Josh wants to go beyond that now.